Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to try to create a pair of earrings with an effect that looks reminiscent of the kind of patina you get on heated metal. So what I've got here are a number of different colours in Prima polymer clay, and I have cut out triangles because I'm going to create a 6-part skinner blend. Then I have also cut out another 2 triangles in silver and pearl white to create a different skinner blend. So I'll go through the colours quickly. This is all Prima: navy blue, purple, crimson, pomegranate red, orange, sunbright yellow, silver and pearl white. The silver and the pearl white put to the side, those will get used in a little bit. And for now let's just focus on these colours that we have here. And for the skinner blend you're going to want to just grab your colours and a triangle cutter. This is one of my skinner blend triangle cutters, but any triangle cutter will work. And you just use that to cut out a triangle of clay, and that just makes the skinner blend process easier. Then you're going to go from the navy blue to the purple to the crimson, and you're just going to continue going through the colours, popping them together like so. And if you don't know how to make a skinner blend, I would highly recommend checking out and searching for a skinner blend video on my YouTube channel. I have a number of them already, and they go into much greater detail than what I show in today's video. I'm just showing the general way to set up the skinner blend needed for today's project. But yeah, that's on the channel along with a bunch of other beginners tutorials. Alright, then once you've got all the colours popped together, you're just going to take that and you're going to fold that over. And the beginning bit's a little tricky because all of the colours don't want to stick together. But once you've got it folded over and you just kind of squish them all up, then you can take those and roll them out through your pasta machine a couple of times to blend the colours together and to create a skinner blend across the across the 6 colours. And you're going to do the same for the silver and the pearl white, except this is just a 2-part skinner blend. You'd pop them together exactly the same way, fold a number of times until you get a smooth blend between the colours. Okay, and here is how those 2 blends should come out. Now this one you can leave exactly the way it is. Later on what I'm going to do with it is when it comes to creating the earrings, we're going to be making a Mokume Gane piece. This is going to be the top layer and is going to get stretched out really thin. So I'm going to put that to the side. This however is what the main body of the Mokume Gane is going to be. So you're going to take that and just fold it over again and fold it once more, and the goal is to make it nice and thick so that it's easier to work with, and just tap in the edges so that you don't have little straggly bits of clay, and just form it together and try to get rid of the air bubbles that are in there. Then what we want to do is you want to shorten this down. Now you could do that by creating a skinner blend plug. I also have a video for that on the channel for free. But I don't really want to do that. It takes a bit more time, and I feel like I can get the same result that I want by just taking the edges and just squishing it down and pinching and just gently convincing it that it should be shorter, like so. And where is my roller? Here it is. And sometimes giving it a little roll to thin it out again, and then pinching. And you can see quite quickly there that I get that shortened down by quite a bit. And it's not going to give you a completely clean, even blend. So if you are doing caning of any kind, I would recommend doing the skinner blend plug root, but this is going to be a Mokume Gane, and this is going to get kind of ripped up into pieces, and so I don't need it to be completely even anyway. Right, then you're going to take that and you're going to run that through your pasta machine on the thickest setting, roughly about 2mm thick, from blend side to blend side. And that's what you should end up with. So, much better and easier to work with. So, from there, I am going to take it and I'm just going to break it into lengths. Now, I'm not going to rip it along the long side of the skinner blend, it's always going to be along the short side, like so, so that I have pretty much the entirety of the blend each time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it back together in a similar way that you would if you're creating the torn paper or watercolor technique, just that I'm going to be staggering it slightly so that the blend does move a little up and down. And this is just going to create a little bit of variation when it comes to the piece. Okay, and I'm just going to continue doing that, moving up and down until I get about halfway through my blend, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it. You can either do it with the yellow side and have the yellow in the middle, or you can have it with the blue side having the blue in the middle. I think I'm going to go with the yellow and just kind of take this and turn it a little more into a square shape, because I want to be able to take a few more pieces out than I would otherwise. I hope that made sense. But yeah, just continue doing exactly what I'm doing here, just kind of staggering it and just creating a subtle change in the colours. Okay, and there we go. Once you've done that, just pick it up with your blade. Also, I am working on a ceramic tile. A glass tile will also work, just for those of you that would like to know. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on a piece of plain printing paper. You can use greaseproof paper as well, or hamburger patties, I believe is what it's called. Just anything that isn't going to be sticky and is going to allow you to burnish the clay down and have a nice smooth matte finish. And you can use your fingers to do this, or you can grab a roller. Do not roll like this, just use the roller the same way you would if you're using your fingers, and just burnish the clay flat. And there we go, that's how it should look. Then I also went and took this and I rolled that out as thin as I possibly can. Now, a trick for if your clay is not allowing you to run it out on the thinnest setting of the pasta machine, what you can do is you can sandwich it between two pieces of paper, preferably greaseproof paper over printing paper. But what you would do is you would take that and you would put it on the paper, assuming this is still a thick piece of clay, and you would take the other piece of paper like so, and then you would put that through your pasta machine and just hold the one side as you are rolling it and make sure that this doesn't ripple on itself. I believe I have done a video on how to do that. Let me see if I include it in the description. If I didn't, please let me know in the comments below, because I often forget to do those things. But I do definitely have a video showing how to do that. But basically what it does is, because it's sandwiched between the two pieces of paper, it won't ripple on the rollers, and all you'll have to do is just grab your blade and shimmy it off whatever paper you're using. So if you're having trouble getting really thin pieces of clay, that is a trick I like to use. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place that down onto the clay that we've already got. Okay. And just stretch that across and make sure that you don't trap any air bubbles. You can lift and stretch and then smooth, and that way you prevent air bubbles. Like there, you can see there's one coming out there, so you lift, stretch and smooth. Then grab a piece of paper again, probably a new one from the one that you used to burnish the piece underneath this, because the crimson polymer clay in particular can leave a lot of residue and that can discolor the top clay. So just bear that in mind as well. Okay. Then you're just going to give that a burnish, both to smooth out the ripple that the pasta machine left, but also to make sure that it is burnished down onto the other piece of clay that we have, and so that it's all stuck together and so that there aren't any air bubbles. Like I can see that there is an air bubble there because sometimes they do get trapped no matter how hard you try. And what you do is you just take a blade and first you push on the air bubble to really isolate it and make sure that you can see where it is. Take the blade, slide along the edge and smooth the air bubble out. And that's how you get rid of air bubbles. Okay, then I'm just going to trim away the extra clay, and the one along the clay along the bottom over here would be the pure color. Like there's just silver at the top here, and then there's just pure white at the top. Those can go straight in with your colors again. You don't even have to put that in scrap. But this way, that is a whole skinner blend, so that would go in scraps. Anyway, I'm gonna lift that, actually do that with your fingers out of the way, lift that up off the paper like so, and now we're ready to texture it. And I'm actually going to run this through the pasta machine again on the thickest setting, just to make sure that it is the right thickness, and also to just make sure that the two sheets of clay are bonded together. Alright, and we're just about ready to go. Now I'm not sure if the camera can pick that up, but the way to know if your top piece of clay is thin enough is that you should be able to just barely see the ghost of the underlying clay through the top layer. I'm not sure if that's picking up, but that's how you know if it's thin enough. If you have to roll this through the pasta machine a couple settings down and it ends up being too thin for you to stamp, what you can do is you can just pop a layer of backing clay over the back. Generally I will use black to bulk the clay back up again. Now I'm going to be using this texture stamp because I'm going to be going with a metal theme, and so I thought that I would go with a cog texture stamp. This is the one of the ones available on my Etsy store, Jessima Design. There will be a link in the description below if you're interested. Then I'm going to dust cornstarch over the top of my clay so it shouldn't be sticky, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the stamp. Okay, and I prefer to be quite generous with the cornstarch just to make sure that the clay doesn't stick in the stamp. But that just goes for if you are using a polymer clay texture stamp or a rubber texture stamp. If you're using a silicone texture stamp, only dust the polymer clay. Don't worry about dusting the stamp because the stamp already will be quite stick proof, if that's the correct wording. And by adding more cornstarch, it actually will prevent the clay from sticking in the stamp to the degree needed to get a nice clean image. Then I place that with the Skinner Blend side facing down, and then I've got a baby wiper over the top because it prevents my fingers, or if you choose to use your roller, it prevents those things from sticking to the clay and lifting it out of the stamp, because the back of the clay right now is still sticky. Which is something I like to keep because then I can press it down onto the ceramic tile that I use and have a good foothold when I'm shaving my Mokume Gane. But it can be a bit of a pain when you're trying to texture it, so I like to have a buffer in between. Okay, and I just use my fingers to do this, but as I said, you can use your roller as well. Okay, and that should do. I should have plenty of a stamp image there. Just going to take that and lift that up, and it shouldn't stick in the stamp, but I would still recommend gently going around the edges, pulling it out gently because sometimes it can stick still. and there was this one spot where it did rip, so that's again another reason to just take it out gently, because then you have a lot more control. Then just get the tile or whatever work surface you're using a wipe, because that's going to have a bit of cornstarch residue on it. Then with the flat of your palm, press that down onto the tile. This doesn't introduce too much pressure, it's just enough to get it to kind of stick to your surface. And just give it a gentle test to see if it's stuck. If it has, then you can trim away the extra clay. And this is still very usable. We'll probably continue using that in the project, so I'm just going to pop that to the side. But yeah, that's still very usable, so it's not bad scrap. I probably will use it for my backing. Alright, then grab a nice thin tissue blade, and this part I want you to go very slowly with. Very slowly. Just want you to shave the raised parts of the texture. And the shallower your texture, the slower I want you to go, because you don't want to be going too deep. You just want to shave the top layer off. And generally what I'll do is I'll shave off the most obvious areas, like for instance the deepest part of the texture in this case are the little cogs, but then I will also go in after I have done those, and I will very carefully shave over the lines of the texture so that I can start to expose some of the colour there as well. But I don't like to try to do that all at once, because oftentimes that's when a mistake can be made and you end up going too deep. But you'll just continue doing that. Also, if you don't feel like you're confident in doing something like this, try a deeper texture step. The deeper the texture step, the easier this will be. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're planning on doing this. Alright. And there we go. That's how it should look. And you can see how the process of shaving over the kind of torn skinner blend effect really looks quite cool. And that's why I didn't just go with a straight excuse me, my tongue is getting tight. That is why I didn't go with a straight skinner blend, because this creates a lot more variation in the pattern while still achieving the skinner blend like effect. Now, the next step is going to be to just grab a piece of paper and to just burnish over the top, because there are going to be some slight divots in the surface caused by the blade. There's also going to be some of the texture left over, just very fine parts of the texture, so I like to go over and burnish everything just to make sure that it's all nice and smooth. And then from that point you could use it straight as it is, but in this case I am going to be adding extra texture to it. But that's only going to be after I've cut my piece out. So that should be enough for the burnishing, and it should feel completely smooth to the touch. Then lift that up off your tile, and this is of course completely double-sided, and you're pretty much good to go from there. Okay, and for the next step I'm going to use this little octagon kind of, that's not an octagon, a hexagon cog donut. But before I do that, I did realise actually that when I burnished it, I should have actually picked it up first and placed it on another piece of paper so that both the back and the front got burnished, because right now the back, if you look there, kind of has a lot of pits and dents in it, and that's not something that I want, because I'll have to sand all of that out later. So preferably burnish it between two pieces of paper when you burnish it. Okay. And then when you've done that, then you can actually cut your earrings out. I'm just choosing a spot where I'll be able to get pretty much all of the colours, and I want to be able to cut 4 pieces out, so I'm just double checking that too. Okay, and I am cutting it on a piece of paper, and I've burnished it so it shouldn't stick in the cutter. should pop out like that. And I'm just going to cut it so that I get plenty of the cogs showing up. And for 2 of these pieces I am going to cut and then leave them straight as they are. And then for another 2 pieces I'm going to cut and then texture them. And then you can let me know in the comments which ones you prefer. Okay, that one did stick a little bit. That's fine. Yes. And I quite like how this has come out. It's quite colourful. And of course you could use any colours you want and any texture you want. And then I'm just going to lift that up. Okay. And that's also good scraps. You can use that with a bunch of different techniques. Right, then for the ones that I'm going to leave, the most interesting ones I think are these 2. So I am going to leave those untextured. Then for these ones I'm going to lift them up off the paper so that they don't stick. Don't try to pull them up, you might end up distorting. Okay, separate the middle because I need to texture all the pieces separately. So just gently get that middle out. Okay, and move them to a separate piece of paper. And these ones over here I'm going to leave just on the paper as they are, and they're going to bake for a full hour at Burroughs recommended temperature. And for those other ones I'm going to bring over 2 texture stamps, and these are made using just some what they're called ball tools, where you just kind of create a hammered effect in the clay, and that would be that one. Then you bake that and then you can make a reverse stamp from that. They're also available on my Etsy store if you want that, but these are very easily made by yourself, so there's no real need to get them from the Etsy store if you have the ball tools to make them. But I've dusted them with cornstarch. Then you also want to do the same for the pieces that you cut out. Okay, and when you do dust these little pieces, make sure that you dust both sides. And then I'm going to pop them down onto the stamp along with these little pieces as well. Okay, and I already figured out that this is roughly the correct slottage to have it be an exact reverse image. And then I'm going to texture it by pressing down and having those pieces sandwiched between the 2 pieces of texture. And you can do this with any texture stamp where you have both the textures you want. It doesn't even have to be a full reverse. You could do 2 different textures on either side if you wanted. Okay, then lift. Okay. And this part's the delicate bit because it's quite thin, but it shouldn't stick to the texture because it's been heavily cornstarched. And then you're going to pop that onto a piece of paper off to the side. And those are also going to bake for a full hour at Burroughs recommended temperature. Okay, and just gently lift it off the texture. If it's not lifting happily, then just kind of fuss with the angling and it should pop up better. And there we go, you've got texture on both sides. Okay. And then lift these ones up as well. They're going to get baked as well because they're going to be the top pieces of the earring. Okay, and then once they're out of the oven, you should be ready to drill them. Now, you might find that there is a little bit of roughness around the edges. If that's the case, then just go over them with a piece of sandpaper quickly to clean it all up. But otherwise, you should be pretty much good to just go straight from here. Now, I'm going to drill them so that the brightest point and darkest point are slightly offset from one another, with the brightest point not being perfectly at the bottom. So let's see, I'm going to put it at that point. I already cut it with it being offset, but do keep in mind where the brightest point of your piece is, and then just position your little top bit to work with it. And I'm just using a little handheld pin drill here, and you can see that drills through the clay quite quickly. Then I'm going to take this piece, and if this is offset to this side, then I'm going to make sure that I put that with the bright point pointing in the same direction. Then I'll drill that at the bottom and then at the top, and I'm using a nice thin drill bit. Also, you can have pieces this thin. I think they're about 1 millimeter thick. They might even be thinner than that. If you bake the clay correctly, that is perfectly fine. Your pieces don't need to be thick. Making it like 1 millimeter thicker doesn't actually make it that much stronger if the clay is not baked correctly. The clay should be flexible, so if you can see here how much bend it has, it should be able to do that without any damage to the piece. If you are planning on making thinner pieces, because that way the earrings don't weigh too much, definitely make sure that you're baking the clay in such a way that it is flexible. And generally, if it isn't and is brittle, then the clay hasn't been baked at a high enough temperature. Generally, I bake my clay for an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. I can't remember exactly what the temperature is, but it is on the packet, and I bake it from a cold start. That's why I bake it for an hour. If you preheat the oven, then half an hour generally is enough. It's more the temperature that is the important bit, more so than the length of time, because if it's baked at too cool of a temperature, it doesn't really matter how long you bake it for, it's not going to be nice and flexible. So if you're having trouble with your pieces, it's more than likely the temperature, and I would recommend a little thermometer to help out with that, because sometimes the ovens aren't completely accurate on the dial. That was a little bit of a tangent that I went on there. But there we go. I assembled that using gunmetal because I thought that went nicely with the theme that we've got going on here, which is heated metal. And you just apply jump rings and then your ear wire. And I've done that with the other pieces, including the ones that have kind of the hammered metal effect. And because it's all clay and there's no mixed media such as mica powders or paint, you could leave them exactly like this, but I do want to varnish them to give them a little bit more of a shiny finish, so I'm going to bring over my Varnishing. Okay, and this is the pot. It is Varnishing water-based gloss varnish. It is a polyurethane formula, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little wire, and I'm actually going to suspend that over the bucket. I also have a little basket off to the side over here, one that I use for my varnishing. I also have a wire on there, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to suspend them in the varnish, jump rings and all. And it's perfectly fine to pop the varnish on the metal findings. I've never had problems with it. The only thing that you do need to keep in mind when you're doing this is that it can clog the findings a little bit, so you might need to go in with a brush and just unplug it a little bit. But I find that the act of doing that doesn't take anywhere near as much time as having to brush 2 coats on the front and then brush 2 coats on the back for each of the subsequent pieces. So generally I find this to just be quicker. Okay, and I suspend it over the pot like this because the excess varnish will drip off into the pot. Then once that's been done for probably about a minute, then I will move it over onto the little basket, which is this. I'll take the wire, pop it over, and that should be enough actually. I don't think I've shown this whole process before, so I just move that over onto the basket, and again make sure that you just tuck the wire around so that it doesn't fall off on you. Let me just move that to the side. Okay, And then I've just got this, and this is the one that I always use for varnishing, so it's a little bit, you can see it, there's a lot of mess over here, but that's fine. Then you're going to take anything along the lines of a baby wipe and just separate these out first, because you don't want them touching each other, and drips will develop at the bottom, and so you want to just go and dab the bottom, and I will do that over the course of about 5 minutes, at which point the varnish will be dry enough that it won't form a whole bunch of those drips, and then you can just leave it for about 15 minutes to dry. And if it's doing that, then I will just actually form a chink in the wire, and that way it can't move. And a lot of the time the jump rings do unclog on their own, but do keep in mind that you need to check that before the varnish dries completely. I'll give this about 15 minutes to dry, and then they're pretty much done. And there we go. That is pretty much how they look once the first coat of varnish has dried. And I quite like them the way they are. I don't really want them to have a perfectly shiny surface. I think some shiny spots with some more matte areas I think looks nice. So I'm only going to apply 1 coat of varnish. Feel free to apply 2 coats, that will give you a more glossy finish, especially on the textured ones. The flat ones will have a more overall glossy finish. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the tutorial. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Also, if you have any suggestions for future tutorials, consider leaving them there as well. I read each and every single one of the comments, so anything you want to say, leave down there and I will read it as soon as possible. And if you like the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing, as it helps the channel out and is greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to support the channel further so I can continue doing videos just like this one, please do consider becoming a member of the channel. There is a join button just below the video, or there is a link to my Patreon account in the description below. Both are one and the same, where I make exclusive tutorials that are a little more complicated than the ones that I show on YouTube. Either one is greatly appreciated. And again, I do hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.